I never imagined in a million years that I would be speaking a second language every day, that I would be talking to people about my ideas about art and education, that I would be publishing and talking about my work all over the world. And I think that that's what I hope, and that's why I think it's so important that everybody has an art education experience, is that the methods that you learn from imagining something in your head and making it real in the world is what you need to feel empowered to lead the life that you want to have. I'm Flavia Bastos, and I'm a professor at the University of Cincinnati in the Art Education program, which is located in the School of Art. I went through the ranks of public education and I had great mentors in high school. And I went to school, to college, to be a teacher. But the arts were always a part of my life. I was a trained dancer. I took ballet classes for most of my life. I was part of a public studio in my hometown, so I made art on the side. I always had great art teachers. So it wasn't until I finished college that I was teaching elementary school and I had sort of this passion for the arts that I realized I could integrate these two parts of my identity. So I left Brazil and I went to graduate school in the United States to pursue an art education master's degree, which then became a PhD. And in it, I sort of combined my love for the arts with my love for education and became an art educator. And really, I think then began to understand that the arts were much broader than the way I thought about them when I was in school. I think art and creativity are really where life becomes interesting. I cannot think about a day in my life where I'm not honing aspects of my creativity. So I wasn't really happy just being a teacher. I wanted something more. And I wasn't particularly happy just being a dancer or an artist either, because I wanted that to have a greater impact. So when I became an art educator and I felt I could teach kids about how art and creativity are part of everyday life, I found my footing. Because for me, art is really part of everything we do. It's how we solve problems, it's how we find meaning, it's how we connect with other people. I am very interested in everyday creativity and the idea that everyone can be an artist. And part of what I do on my free time is to collect objects that are made by everyday people who don't call themselves artists, textiles and ceramics and carvings. So I'm very interested in what some people would call folk art. But then in the fine arts category, I really love the work of many women artists. I love Frida Kahlo, who is a Latina like me, Louise Bourgeois, who really makes art about ideas and topics that are important to women. I am drawn to Latin American artists because I think they speak of an experience and a culture that's, closer to me. Art is really a process of discovery. So you start with an idea and you explore it, you refine it, you try, you fail, you try again. And then when you discover something new, very much like science or research, you are at the end of it. As a professor, I do research, and one of the threads cutting across my research is about human creativity and how it resides in various, in all cultures, in all segments of society. So I think what I wished I knew earlier was to understand that failure is integral to the process of creativity. I think as a society, we are so driven to get it right, to do it better. And we forget that failing is how we get there, right? I mean, some of the greatest discoveries, some of the products we use every day come out of things that didn't work out, and it got redeployed and reconceptualized and tried again. So I think there is a lot of anxiety, and I see that in my students, and I see that when I work with young kids too, to be right, and that, you know, that is going to be a great cost if you don't get things right at the first time. So I wished I had understood sooner that failing is integral to creativity and to making art. Actually, the artist Anish Kapoor, who made Cloud Gates, you know, that big, the bean sculpture that's what people call it in Chicago. He has a wonderful quote. He says that if artists are lucky, they fail really fast, and then they recover from it. In my job as an art professor, I usually host visiting artists, and some of the best visiting artists we host really advise our students that one of the important things artists need to learn to do is to establish relationships. So some of these visiting artists say, when I'm in a new town, I look up art schools or universities online, and I cold call or cold email people to come over and to show my work. So I think the advice is really, if you are thinking about that career, go meet some folks who are involved in art and creativity. You know, I've worked in all kinds of settings. Sometimes I work in rural settings where there is no art gallery, no art school, but there is always somebody who is making stuff, because that's who we are as humans. So go find those people who are involved with a life of creativity and go talk to them. Go learn some lessons, get some names, go talk with some other folks. Have a feel for what that life looks like. You are not going to make as much money as a doctor or as an attorney, but you also will have the privilege of working from what matters to you. Really, to build a strong portfolio, you need to look inside, right? You need to look at what are your passions, what are your interests, what are the experiences that you know. All art is ultimately about what we know, and it's a process of knowing other things. So no one can make art about stuff that they haven't experienced and don't know. So I'd say build a portfolio based on experiences that you've had. Use images that you like, that mean something to you. Stay true to yourself. Ultimately, art is also a process of self-discovery. So a lot of my students are artists and art educators, and they see that as sort of two sides of the same coin. Their artistic practice and the fact that they are making art, they are thinking about the creative process, informs how they set up lesson plans and how they teach in school. There are lots of ways to being an artist. You can have that title, you can be that person who exhibits work at a gallery, who sells work on the internet. But there are ways to be an artist and being a designer, being a creative problem solver, being a community planner and design cities. I think any occupation in the 21st century could benefit tremendously from creativity. Almost it can't really function without an influx of creativity. And if you stretch that terminology of what an artist is very broadly or more broadly, you can find other ways to fit. I really think I am an artist, although I make very few visual objects. I write, I teach, I work with people, I mentor young people, but I do it all through creative ways. So in those ways, I think I find a way to sort of respond to my vocation of being an artist and make the world a more interesting place. The arts are important, and they are something that humans have done always, since prehistoric times, as an attempt to make meaning out of their lives. So to me, That's a very important thing to nurture.